we talk about disrupting, disruptors, the conversation is usually around the usual suspects, the likes of Facebook and Amazon and Google, who are digital natives, so they had that kind of first mover advantage. They've built their businesses around technology and media, and have really leveraged that to get to the size that they have. They continuously reinvent themselves and create new opportunities. And then on the other hand, we have the tech startups who start from scratch and create new businesses and new models from nothing. And those are the likes of Uber and Airbnb, but of course they're not startups anymore, but everyone that's followed on that trend, really. And what I think is the most important element that brings those brands together that they have in common is agility. So they've built a business around agility. They've built a business around refusal of legacy. And if we think about it, Amazon is actually not a very new brand. They are 22 years old this year. So they also have some sort of legacy, which is around books. But probably no one in this room would think about books as the first thing that comes to mind for Amazon. At the same time, if you're buying a book, you're probably going to Amazon. So they have the best of both worlds there. Also, what is in common amongst those brands is the fact that they are not scared of changing idea about who they are. So Facebook said from the beginning they were not a content business, and look at them now. They've changed the narrative about themselves because they know that they need to do that in order to go with the times. But really, this change is not affecting only those usual suspects. It's taking everyone, all industries are impacted. And reimagining the last mile is not just something for tech companies or for tech startups, as well as e-commerce businesses such as the Facebooks and the Google of this world. But how about those legacy industries? How do they reimagine themselves, considering they have been going for 100 years and they are stuck in a modus operandi that is very difficult to change? So today I thought that a different perspective would have been to look at some of those legacy businesses and see how they can reinvent themselves and pick up some of the examples of brands that have done exactly that. And that could be both legacy brands as well as newer brands that have completely reinvented an entire industry. And to illustrate those points, I've picked some of the industries that I find myself are generally very legacy-driven and sometimes stuck in tradition. And that's the fashion industry, understood as the high-end luxury, so high-end fashion. The entertainment industry, so massive film production and TV production, as well as electronic goods, so TVs, cameras, and phones. And the examples that I've chosen to illustrate those as the drivers of change in those industries are respectively Burberry, GoPro for the electronics, as well as Netflix for the entertainment industry. So what do those brands have in common? Although they are very, very different from each other, they have in common an attitude to break decades of legacy within the industry, not just in the way they reimagine communication, but beyond that, in the way they reimagine their entire business and in the way they are reimagining the industry in so doing. And by so doing, they're also putting the last mile as the first across the way they conduct business. So their supply chain, completely relooking at their supply chain, completely relooking at the relationship building, and also in the way they engage culturally, so construct thinking, and in the way, finally, that they create value. And especially the now is the new normal is one of the aspects that we're going to put some attention on in the next few examples. So they truly are reimagining the last mile as the first. Starting from the fashion industry. If you are familiar with the fashion industry, it is an industry that has not reinvented itself for 60 years. I'm Italian, so I quite like the tradition of it. I like the hand stitching, I like the tailor-made, and I like the fact that the industry has managed to actually protect itself and some of the traditions within it. However, 60 years of a model of a catwalk, of a supply chain that goes from showing you a collection that was in the making for 6 months and then another 6 months for you to be able to buy a product. How can that be relevant in the world that we live in, where people are expecting to get products at their fingertips? Is not going to be relevant anymore in 6 months' time because they would have forgotten about it or found an alternative. And the first challenge to this industry came from the high street fashion, who started to copy the collections and bring those designs to the market much sooner than the luxury industry. Of course, to a different market, but still, it's a challenge that has been very relevant for the fashion brands.